truth is in the files.
What if the scariest parts of these movies weren't made up?
What if the fiction in your favorite horror films was actually a terrifying reflection of reality? From The Exorcist to other spine-chilling tales, Hollywood has often adapted genuine, documented cases of demonic possession. Prepare to have your perceptions shattered as we uncover the true, horrifying spiritual battles that inspired some of the most iconic American horror movies. Welcome to the Conjuring Files, where we go beyond the screen to explore the documented, the disputed, and the deeply unsettling. I'm your guide, and today, we're pulling back the curtain on cinema's darkest secret. Many of its monsters were born in real life. Think of the spinning head in The Exorcist, the guttural voice, the levitating bed. It terrified audiences in 1973, but it didn't come from a writer's imagination alone. It came from a real case, a 1949 exorcism performed on a young boy in Maryland, documented by priests, witnessed by doctors, and later chronicled by journalist William Peter Blatty, who turned it into the novel that became the film. But The Exorcist is just the beginning. Across decades, Hollywood has mined real trauma for terror. And while studios change names, locations, and details for drama, the core often remains chillingly intact. A person in distress, a family desperate for answers, and clergy stepping into the unknown. These weren't random scares. They were echoes of actual events, cases where rational people, including trained professionals, walked away saying, "I can't explain what I saw." Critics argue these stories are shaped by belief, mental health crises, or cultural panic, and those perspectives matter. But even skeptics admit, the consistency across cases is uncanny. The same patterns, aversion to sacred objects, unexplained languages, physical strength beyond human capacity, appear again and again in official reports, not just scripts. So why does Hollywood keep returning to these stories? Because they tap into a primal fear that evil isn't just metaphorical, but intelligent. And that sometimes the line between fiction and faith isn't drawn by writers, but by those who lived it. Today, we begin with the case that started it all, the one that made priests keep records, journalists take notes, and filmmakers dare to dramatize the unimaginable. Because the truth is far older than the movie, and far less fictional. Next, the boy behind The Exorcist, his real name erased, his story buried, but his impact undeniable. In 1949, a 13-year-old boy, known only as Roland Doe to protect his identity, became the center of one of the most meticulously recorded exorcism cases in American history. What began with strange knocks and moving furniture in his Maryland home escalated into something far more disturbing. According to priests who witnessed it, the boy exhibited strength far beyond his size, spoke in guttural voices claiming to be demons, and recoiled violently at the sight of religious symbols, even tearing pages from a Bible with his bare hands. But the most chilling detail? He wasn't acting alone. Multiple clergy, including Jesuit priests from Georgetown University, documented sessions where the entity identified itself by name, mocked their prayers, and even predicted future events with unsettling accuracy. One priest wrote in his journal, "It knew things no child could know, not just facts, but secrets we'd never spoken aloud." Now, consider this. When William Peter Blatty read about the case as a student at Georgetown, he didn't see fiction. He saw truth wrapped in trauma. Years later, as a novelist, he transformed Roland's story into The Exorcist, not to scare, but to explore faith in the face of the inexplicable. And director William Friedkin? He didn't want special effects to carry the horror. He demanded realism, so he consulted with actual exorcists. He visited psychiatric wards. He even played real audio of distressed patients on set to unsettle his actors. The result? Scenes that felt less like cinema and more like testimony. Take the infamous spinning head. In the film, it's shocking, but in the case files, priests described the boy's neck twisting unnaturally during fits, so severely they feared permanent injury. The levitation? Witnesses claimed he rose inches off the bed during prayer, defying gravity for several seconds. The green vomit? While exaggerated on screen, the boy did expel substances doctors couldn't identify. Thick, foul-smelling, and unlike anything medical science could explain. Laddie and Friedkin changed names, ages, and locations, but the core remained intact. A child in torment, adults out of their depth, and a battle not just for a soul, but for understanding. Critics say the case can be explained by rare epilepsy, dissociative identity disorder, or mass suggestion, and those theories deserve space. But what even skeptics struggle with is the sheer volume of documentation. Dozens of pages signed by educated men who had every reason to deny the extraordinary, yet chose to record it. Because sometimes, the scariest part of a horror movie isn't the monster. It's knowing someone once lived it. Next, the lesser-known case that inspired the Conjuring universe, and why its truth is still fiercely debated today.
2 cases, 1 legacy, and a doll that refused to stay still.
While The Exorcist shocked the world with one boy's ordeal, another American family's nightmare would later ignite a paranormal legacy and a cinematic universe. Enter Ed and Lorraine Warren, a self-taught demonologist and a clairvoyant who rose to prominence not through spectacle, but through case files, witness statements, and a quiet insistence that some hauntings were more than just echoes. Their most famous case began in 1971, when the Perron family moved into a secluded farmhouse in Harrisville, Rhode Island. What started as cold spots and odd smells quickly escalated. The mother reported being physically dragged from bed by an unseen force. The daughters spoke of an entity they called the man in the basement, a presence that mimicked voices, scratched their skin, and once held a child underwater in the bathtub. At first, even the Warrens were cautious. But after weeks of investigation, including recorded EVPs, temperature drops, and consistent witness accounts, they concluded this wasn't residual energy. It was intelligent, and it was hostile. The family begged for an exorcism, but the local diocese refused, citing lack of evidence. So the Warrens performed a lesser rite, a spiritual cleansing, while urging the family to leave. They did, and the activity reportedly ceased, though the house remains a point of pilgrimage for paranormal seekers to this day. But the Warrens' collection didn't stop there. Around the same time, they took custody of another object that would become iconic, Annabelle. Not the porcelain doll from the movies, but a simple Raggedy Ann-style toy gifted to 2 nursing students in Connecticut. According to their account, the doll moved on its own, left handwritten notes, and once caused deep scratches on a roommate's chest. When the women reached out in fear, the Warrens didn't dismiss them. They took the doll, sealed it in a glass case, and warned visitors never to touch it. Critics argue these cases stem from stress, suggestion, or undiagnosed mental health conditions, and those perspectives are valid. But what's harder to explain is the consistency. Multiple witnesses, across years, describing the same patterns of behavior, often before any media exposure. Hollywood amplified these stories, adding spinning heads, flying furniture, and demonic faces. But the real power of these cases lies not in the theatrics, but in the quiet terror of ordinary people who swore something was watching and waiting. Because sometimes, the most haunting thing isn't what you see on screen. It's what real families say they lived through. Next, the true story behind the haunting in Connecticut. A tale of murder, media frenzy, and a house that may, or may not, be haunted.
A house with a past.
In the late 1980s, the Snedeker family moved into a modest home in Southington, Connecticut, seeking affordability, not infamy. But what they found was anything but ordinary. Almost immediately, strange phenomena began. Foul odors with no source, phantom footsteps in empty hallways, and objects vanishing only to reappear in bizarre arrangements. Then came the most disturbing development. Their teenage son, Philip, began exhibiting drastic personality shifts, speaking in guttural tones, displaying unnatural strength, and claiming an unseen presence was pushing him toward violence. Desperate, the family reached out for help. That's when paranormal investigators, including Ed Warren, stepped in. They documented cold spots, unexplained shadows, and EVP recordings that seemed to respond to questions. But what made this case stand out wasn't just the activity, it was the house's history. Forensic research revealed the property had once served as a funeral home in the early 20th century. Records showed embalming fluids were stored in the basement, and some claimed bodies were prepared in what was now the family's living room. Warren believed the residual energy of death had created a spiritual vortex, a place where the veil between worlds thinned. He warned the family the entity wasn't just lingering, it was feeding. Eventually, a local priest performed a blessing, and the Snedekers moved out shortly after. The activity, they said, stopped the moment they left. But here's where the story fractures. Skeptics, including prominent paranormal researcher Joe Nickell, later investigated and found no verifiable evidence of supernatural activity. They pointed to Philip's pre-existing medical conditions, possible carbon monoxide exposure, and the family's financial stress as more plausible explanations. Even the funeral home connection was disputed. Some records suggested it was only a residence with occasional use for viewings, not full embalming. Yet, the Snedekers stood by their account, and in 2009, Hollywood turned their ordeal into The Haunting in Connecticut, amplifying the horror, but also reigniting debate. So what's the truth? Was this a genuine case of location-based haunting tied to a dark past? Or a tragic convergence of illness, environment, and belief? The answer may lie not in ghosts, but in how we interpret suffering when science falls short. Because sometimes, the real horror isn't in the house. It's in the silence that follows when no one believes you. Next, the controversial legacy of the unseen influences, where truth, trauma, and tabloids collide.
Are these films entertainment, or a window into something we can't explain?
At the heart of every exorcism story, real or retold, is the same raw human thread, desperation. Not the kind that screams, but the kind that whispers in the dark when all other answers have failed. A mother watching her child speak in a voice not their own. A family fleeing a home they can no longer trust. A priest standing in a room, Bible in hand, unsure if he's fighting evil or grief. These cases, Roland Doe, the Perrons, the Snedekers, aren't just ghost stories. They're collisions between faith and doubt, science and mystery, trauma and belief. And Hollywood didn't invent them. It borrowed them. Because the most terrifying horror isn't imagined, it's reported. Think about it. The Exorcist shocked audiences not because of special effects, but because people believed it could happen. The Conjuring felt real because the Perron family swore it did. Even The Haunting in Connecticut tapped into a primal fear that the place meant to shelter you could become your prison. And that's the unseen influence of these true cases. They don't just inspire movies. They shape how we see evil itself. Not as a horned monster, but as something intelligent, patient, and deeply personal. Something that exploits vulnerability, mimics love, and hides in plain sight. Critics say these stories are shaped by mental illness, environmental toxins, or mass hysteria, and those explanations matter. But even skeptics admit the emotional truth is undeniable. These families weren't seeking fame, they were seeking help. And when no one could explain what they experienced, they turned to the only language left, the language of the supernatural. So are these films just entertainment? Or are they something more, a distorted mirror reflecting real anguish, real fear, and real unanswered questions? Maybe the answer lies not in whether demons exist, but in why we keep telling these stories, why we need them, why, in an age of science and reason, we still gather in the dark to watch ordinary people face the extraordinary. Because deep down, we know, sometimes, the most terrifying thing isn't what's under the bed. It's the silence that follows when you realize no one believes you. If this journey through the real hauntings behind Hollywood's horrors unsettled you, challenged you, or made you rethink the line between fact and fear, do us a favor. Like this video, subscribe to the Conjuring Files, and share it with someone who dares to look beyond the screen. And remember, the truth is in the files.